Welcome to the Ethan Upshur series, a series that takes place in the fictional country of Ethalonia. September 2013. As I drove up the mountains on my way to the asylum, I noticed there was just a cold chill in the air. Something that was unusual for the second week of September. But then again, I was up in the mountains, so I decided to put on my green jacket. It usually helped me, and I thank God I was wearing my jeans to go with it, and my boots. I was on my way to St. Stephen's Mental Hospital, which was way up near the town of Overview on Mount God in Ethalonia. I'd received an anonymous tip that there was some illegal activity going on in that asylum and some inhumane and dangerous experimentation. Everything about that piqued my interest, as I'm sure it has piqued your interest, which is why I'm telling you about it. And boy, I have quite to say about that hospital. I pulled up to the big building, and that building, it looked like a castle, like one of those dark brick Gothic castles. And the building itself, it was so big that it was scary. It just had these two big towers with a massive building in front. I couldn't tell if it was connected at first, and it had a couple buildings on the side of it. I couldn't tell if it was all connected then. So I pulled up in the parking lot, and I noticed that the parking lot was shockingly empty. There were only two big white buses, but there were no other cars in the parking lot. So I got out of my Jeep, and I walked towards the entrance. And the outside of the hospital had a nice Central Park hiking trail aesthetic on the outside. I quite enjoyed it, but I wasn't there to judge the outside. I was there to judge the inside. So I walked up to the main entrance doors, which were these French glass window type doors, and they had big curtains on them so you couldn't see what was on the inside. So I knocked on the door, and somebody opened up, and it was a man in a blue button-up shirt, khaki pants, and a tie, and he kind of just looked at me weird, and he just said, "Can I help you?" And being an investigative journalist, they're probably not going to let me in to do an investigation. So I did what I usually did, and I lied. I said, yes, I'm looking about checking my brother in here. You see, he's real sick mentally, and I think this place could be the right place to help him. And he kind of gave me the okay look, and so he led me to the front desk, which was in this big, beautiful lobby in the building. And that lobby, it had royal looking carpeting, and on the ceiling was a big golden and crystal chandelier, and it looked new too. And the desks The front desk looked like it was made out of mahogany, and it looked like they had spared no expense on the computer system at the front desk. And so I walked over there and said, "Hi, I would like to look at checking a relative of mine in here." And she said, "Okay, let me pull up whatever I need to pull up." And she sounded like she wasn't so sure herself. And so she just pulled out uh, a billing form as well as some personal information form. And I was more interested in the billing form. And I looked at the billing form, and it was remarkably cheap. Now, in Ethalonia, healthcare is a lot cheaper because health insurance companies, they pay for a lot more. And when you factor in health insurance, like, it comes out to only $25 a night. And might I say, this was a very, very nice hotel. I mean, mental hospital. And it was beautiful. Like, it looked like a grand hotel. But it seemed like there were a lot of businessmen there. But where were all the mental patients? And I was very impressed with how cheap it was with health insurance. And I noticed on the other side of the lobby, there was a big square room. And it looked like a room with a few computer desks on it. And some office workers worked at those computer desks. And that particular room, it had an espresso machine, an open coffee bar, and it also had a brand new Vizio flat screen TV in the office. And I noticed later on that that was every office. And I just thought, where are they getting all this money from? Because it can't be from the patient bills alone. And then somebody stopped me, and it was a man in a black shiny suit with black shiny hair. And he said, "Hello, can I help you? I hear you've been doing some snooping around." And I said, no, I'm trying to put my nephew, son, brother in here." And he said, "Yeah, sure. Okay, come up to my office, please." And I followed him up to his office, and there was this big, like, elevator that he led me to, and it kind of looked like a big metal cage. It kind of looked out of place in a grand hotel looking hospital such as this. And like and the building itself, it sort of looked like a more golden version of the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. But eventually the manager who was talking to me just said, "Okay, the elevator's taking too long. Let's walk up the stairs." So we did that, and we go into his office, which was on the second floor, behind the lobby. And he leads me in there, and I look up, and I was impressed. Not only was there a fancy dining room set, like all set out, there was also brand new couches and a 10-foot high bookshelves in his office. And he also had a massive big desk with one of those fine leather chairs. And he also had a fully decked out cocktail bar. And there were some expensive drinks behind there, like a 1951 Merlot Chianti. There were some expensive drinks he had in his office. And I just asked him, "Where do you people get all this money? Like, what? Like, do you bankroll the company? And he laughed and said, well, we get some money from the government to take care of our patients a little bit better. And I looked at him and said, well, it looks like you're taking pretty good care of, but what about the patients? Are they being taken care of? And he smiled and said, yes, of course. Why would we not? And I said, okay, well, can I see where the patients stay and how they live? And he smiled again and said, why, of course not. We don't want to stress the patients out. They're under enough stress as is. And I said, okay, but what about my brother? I'm about to put him in here. And what if I don't like the place where the patients stay? And the manager, who later I found out his name was Joel Blair, he said, well, he'll just have to find out, won't he? And he said that in a very creepy voice. He'll have to find out, won't he? And I was reading his body language loud and clear, and his fake smile spoke millions of words. He wanted me to leave. He did not appreciate me snooping around this place. Which is why I was still going to snoop around the place, of course. And I also asked him, I said, well, you see, this place, St. Stephen's, it was built in 2005, and it was officially commissioned as a hospital in 2009. But it's only been operational for 4 years, and there's already been many complaints about abuse of patients. How do you feel about that? And Joel Blair lost his smile and angrily said, no comment. Security! And 2 muscular security guards grabbed me and practically pulled me out of his office. And they basically pulled me down the stairs and pushed me out and said, don't ever come back here again. Tell your brother to find somewhere else. Yeah, real nice people. I knew ever since I investigated the war in Afghanistan and Iraq in 2012, I knew that you can't let anyone bully you into not finding out the truth. You can't let anyone intimidate you. And I learned that from America. No one will ever intimidate me. And that's what I was going to do in Ethalonia. I was going to uncover the truth because I know something bad is happening here. I know. So I looked for another way in. And in the adjacent building, I found it. The adjacent building had this courtyard area with a nice fountain and some nice bushes. But there was also a scaffolding for the construction workers to do some maintenance on. And oh, thank God I took carpentry in high school. And thank God one of the construction workers were on break. So I took his hard hat and his vest and I slapped it on. And I climbed up that ladder and I saw my opening in a window in the building on the 2nd floor. So I said, it's go time. And I quickly jumped into the window before one of the construction workers said, excuse me, who are you? And then I ran outside of the room in which the window was in, and I quickly took off the vest and the hard hat so no one would get suspicious of me. And then I was in a hallway. And it was how you think a hallway would look in an office building, a nice office building. And one room, caught my eye, and it said break room. Okay, let's see how these guys take breaks. And I was stunned to see how they take breaks. And it was an employee break room, and the employees, they had access to recliners, pool tables, a fully stocked up cocktail bar, and a brand new TV in the break room with a Blu-ray DVD player and an Xbox 360 with 15 to 20 new games, as well as a full at least 30 Blu-ray DVD set. And I was still thinking, my God, where are they getting all this money? And so I exit the break room before anyone could see me in there, and I look over across the hall, and there was a room that said employee dormitories. And I was thinking, wait a minute, so the employees live here? And they get paid here? Okay. I need to ask for a job application here because I want to work here. So I walked over to one of the real offices, and I decided I was going to do exactly that while gathering more information. So down the hall, I appear in a skinny white lady's office with brown hair, and she had red lipstick and black glasses. She was also wearing a white button-up shirt and a black skirt. And she looked up from her computer monitor and said, "Can I help you?" And I smiled real calmly, and I said, "Hi, can I have a job application?" And she kind of looked at me weird. And she was like, "A job application? Who'd you talk to about that?" And I said, "Oh, I talked to the lady downstairs. I just want to know more about this company. Like, what do you do here?" And as she was pulling up a job application, she started answering some of my questions. She said, yeah, I keep books here. I'm in charge of some of the money here. And you know me, I'm a reporter, so I'm naturally curious. And I said, "Well, could you give me an estimate on what some of the money goes to?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, sure. I was just approving $250,000 this year to go to one of our patients, William Hope." And I froze, and I said, $250,000 for one patient? What, are we feeding him a steak dinner every night and buying him a new house? And she did not like me saying that. And she said, you're already asking questions that we don't like. Maybe this isn't such a good place for you to work. And okay, yep, I could tell she was getting really annoyed with me, and she was about to call security on my ass. So I said, I gotta go to the bathroom, and I walked out of her office. And then I see the recognizable bathroom sign on a door at the end of the hallway, and I was walking there, and then I was just about to get into the bathroom, and then someone taps me on the shoulder, and I look behind me, and I see a balding man in a suit, and he looked at me with an angry look in his eye, and he said, "Okay, who are you, and why are you asking questions here?" And I got real nervous, and I said, I'm the new guy, you see. I'm here to just uncover some things about the company that I want to find out so I can work here. And he said, okay, yeah, sure, buddy. This is not how the interview process works. Who'd you have an interview with? And I said, and yeah, that guy knew I was lying. So he said, all right, I'm calling security right now. And And my heart started racing because I knew those guys had seen me before. And if they saw me now, oh, they might call the police or worse, use lethal force because they have the right to do that in Ethiopian. And I started being frantic. I was like, no, please don't do that. I'm sorry. I won't ask you more questions. I just would like a tour of this place and like to know how it works. And he was just like, yeah. Shut up. I'm calling security. And then I don't know if this came from the God above or hell below us, but I hear the horrible screeching sound of the alarm. Bah, 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 bah. And then red lights are flashing all over the place, and there's a bell that is just screeching a high-pitched trill, and then everyone looks up from their desk. They are frantic, and their heart's racing just as fast as mine, and they're all screaming, what's going on? What's going on? This has never happened before. What's going on? And I use the chaos to slip away into a lounge area with a refrigerator and what it looked like a stove and a sink. And then I'm in the corner just thinking, okay, what is going on? That's a good question. And I was thinking, okay, maybe, I don't know, somebody spilled some hot coffee. I don't know. And then I thought, oh no, they all know that I'm here. And okay, yep, they are about to kill me because they know that I know that they are committing fraud. They are about to kill me. I got to get out of here. And so I run further down the hall. I get out of the break room and I run down the hall, and then I hear boom, 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 boom. And I recognize that sound as someone who was born in North Carolina to be gunfire. Oh no, somebody's shooting a gun. Wait, but it's not at me. But hold on. If someone's shooting a gun and it's not at me, then who is it? So I ran out the door that was straight ahead of me, and I was on some mezzanine that overlooked the beautiful lobby that I was in, and I see utter pandemonium. I see these guys in big black riot suits, and they're shooting guns, and they're shooting at these deformed, I don't know what the right word to describe them is, but they look like zombies. Like some of them just look either like skeletons with a little bit of flesh on them, or they just looked like the people that you see in hell, literal hell, in those scary paintings. And you see these guys, most of them were either very skinny or muscular, and it looked like they hadn't bathed in weeks. And some of them were either wearing brown, dirty prison uniforms, or they looked like, or they were almost naked, and they had so much emotion on their face. It looked like they were scared, angry, infuriated, enraged, and some of them were hungry. It was hard to describe the the chaos that was unfolding in that beautiful lobby as it became covered in blood. And in the chaos, some of the office workers were shot in the friendly fire because these patients, I don't know what to call them. I don't even know if they were human. They would run and they would run so fast that the guards, they wouldn't know if they were shooting at, because they had this heavy tactical riot gear on, and they would sometimes shoot the innocent bystanders over there. And it wasn't long now till I saw 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and eventually like 15 bodies just from where I was standing. And I saw it. It looked like what the Vietnam vets and the Afghan vets and the Iraq and every war that I had ever interviewed described as the chaos of a firefight. But these patients, I guess what they were called, they didn't have guns, but they didn't have fear either. They would run up on the security guards. Not all of them did have the riot gear on, but to the ones that didn't have riot gear on, I saw what they did to them. They ran, showing no fear to their guns, and they just held them. They held those poor security guards down in blue uniforms and beat them and beat them and beat them with their own nightsticks, and then shot them with their own guns. And eventually, they overran the big security guards that were in all that riot gear. They overran them and just brutalized them. And it looked like something you would see in a zombie movie, but this was all real. This was happening in front of me, and I was on a balcony inside a building looking down on them. And I'm thinking, oh no, are they going to come for me next? So I ran into this other big room, and apparently it was a library, or was. It had been ransacked, and there was a big security guard in the same tactical riot gear, and he was just cowering in a corner. The fear in his eyes and voice is something I'll never forget. And all he said to me was, "You have to get out of this terrible place." And he didn't have to tell me twice. I had to get out. This concludes episode 1. Please listen to the next episode for more information. I'll be back next time. Bye.